Imagine you have like a $1 billion product pipeline sitting right on your desk.
Right.
And your boss walks in, drops this massive, incredibly high stakes decision right in your lap, and tells you to make the call based on exactly 10% of the facts.
Which sounds completely insane to most people.
Totally insane. I mean, in a traditional corporate skyscraper, making a $1 million move when you are missing 90% of the data, you get fired before lunch.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt.
But if you're sitting in a Silicon Valley garage, making that exact same leap with 10% certainty doesn't just, keep you employed. It makes you the CEO.
It's a completely inverted reality,
Yeah.
and it fundamentally changes how humans organize, how we build, and honestly, how we survive in this economy.
Exactly. And that inversion is the anchor for what we are diving into today. So for context, it is June 10th, 2026.
Yep.
And the economic landscape right now is shifting so violently under our feet that all the old maps are, well, they're completely useless.
They really are.
We are doing a depth dive into what is basically a cultural translation guide for this exact moment. It's this fascinating manifesto titled Netizen, Bridging Worlds, Corporate Culture versus Tech Startup Culture.
Which is such a timely source text.
Right, and the core premise here is that we are currently standing on the precipice of this age of abundance. The text notes it's something prophesied in scriptures thousands of years ago, but it's being mechanically engineered right now.
Which, I mean, that is an incredibly bold framing.
It's huge.
But it actually matches the sheer velocity of the moment we're in. And for you, the listener, understanding this text is just absolutely critical.
Yeah, no matter where you work.
Exactly. Whether you're actively trying to climb a traditional corporate ladder, or maybe bootstrapping a disruptive startup in your living room, or honestly just trying to survive the inevitable chaotic collision of those two worlds.
Because they are colliding.
They are. Because we aren't just looking at, a simple comparison of business models or org charts here. We are analyzing two distinct, largely incompatible operating systems.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because calling them operating systems is exactly right. I love that term.
It fits perfectly.
They are two entirely different languages that dictate human behavior, risk assessment, and how innovation actually happens. You can't just install a startup program on a corporate mainframe. It will crash.
It crashes spectacularly. I mean, every single time.
And this brings us right to you, listening to this. Think about your own workplace for a second.
Yeah, do a little self-audit.
When a major choice is on the table, do you naturally wait to gather, say, 80% certainty before making a move? Do you build the spreadsheets, gather the consensus, try to mitigate every possible downside?
The standard corporate playbook.
Right. Or do you leap at 10%? Do you look at just a tiny fragmented pattern, trust your gut, and just jump?
Assuming you'll just figure out how to weave the parachute on the way down.
Exactly. Your natural instinct there dictates which of these two worlds you actually belong in.
And, to illustrate just how disorienting it is to cross from one of these worlds to the other, the source text uses this brilliant analogy to set up the whole framework.
Oh, the engineer analogy. I love this.
It's so good. So it asks you to imagine a highly skilled, brilliant software engineer who has spent a decade really thriving in India.
Okay.
Their technical expertise is just flawless. Their Hindi is fluent. But more importantly, they implicitly understand the surrounding ecosystem, right?
Right, the unwritten rules.
Exactly. They know how to navigate the local bureaucracy, the office hierarchy, the really specific cultural expectations of, say, a Friday afternoon meeting versus a Monday morning one.
They are completely optimized for that specific environment.
They're at the absolute top of their game. But then literally overnight, they are relocated to Japan.
Now, hold on. I have to interject here and push back a little.
Go for it.
Isn't code just code? I mean, mathematics is universal. If I write an incredibly elegant, bug-free piece of software, or, if I know how to structurally engineer a bridge so it doesn't collapse, the laws of physics don't care if I'm sitting in New Delhi or Tokyo.
The compiler definitely doesn't care.
Right. The compiler doesn't care if I'm wearing a bespoke suit or an old hoodie. My output is the same.
And that, right there, that highly logical assumption is exactly the trap that ruins so many brilliant professionals.
Wait, really?
Yes, because the engineering principles remain universal, absolutely. The math is the math. But the mechanism of deploying that math has completely shifted.
Ah.
While the code is the same, the context required to actually get that code shipped has become entirely foreign.
Because it's not just about typing the syntax into the machine. It's about getting the human team to agree on the architecture.
Precisely. In Japan, business decisions often rely heavily on a process called nemawashi.
Yamawashi, okay.
Yeah, it's this informal, quiet consensus building that happens long before the actual official meeting even takes place.
So the meeting isn't actually where the decision is made.
Exactly. So if our brilliant engineer walks into a boardroom in Tokyo, ignores that unwritten cultural protocol, and just starts aggressively debating the technical merits of a project like they did back home,
They're going to crash and burn.
they will fail.
Yeah.
Not because their code is bad, but because they haven't learned the local language of collaboration.
Wow.
Their technical value immediately diminishes. In any complex modern organization, a culturally disconnected genius is functionally useless compared to, say, a culturally fluent average worker.
That is a brutal reality check. Just brutal.
It really is.
Your domain knowledge travels with you, but your success demands a totally new mindset. And that brings us directly to the foundational metrics separating these two worlds in the manifesto.
Yeah.
The 10% versus 80% rule.
The absolute core of the cultural divide.
Startups are engineered from the ground up to reward speed, adaptability, and pure intuition. They regularly pull the trigger on major company-altering decisions with just 10% of the information.
Which is terrifying for an outsider.
It's pure chaos.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the corporate world demands 80% certainty. And here is the absolute kicker from the text, that 80% certainty. It may never actually arrive.
Right. And to understand how those mechanics actually work, you have to look at the underlying survival incentives for both ecosystems.
The why behind behavior.
Exactly. Corporations exist primarily to protect. They have massive, established revenue streams, global supply chains, decades of brand equity.
They have a lot to lose.
A ton to lose. If a Fortune 500 company rolls out a broken product, it's not some cute learning opportunity.
Right, it's a PR nightmare.
It's a catastrophic loss of shareholder value. It's followed by congressional hearings, class action lawsuits, product recalls.
Yeah, the stakes are totally different.
That existential threat creates the mechanical need for 80% certainty. You implement waterfall methodologies, you require strict compliance reviews, you demand buy-in from legal, from marketing, from HR, and the board.
You are guarding a fortress. And you don't lower the drawbridge until you are entirely sure who is standing outside.
That's a great way to put it. But a startup has no fortress.
They have, what, a garage?
They have a few laptops, seed capital that is burning out every single day, and literally zero market share.
Right.
Their risk profile is completely inverted. The corporate risk is making a mistake. The startup's only risk is moving too slowly.
Because speed is their only advantage.
Yes. If a startup spends 6 months waiting to gather 80% certainty through, focus groups and massive data analysis, they will simply run out of money and die.
They just evaporate.
Or a competitor who is operating on 10% certainty will launch a clumsy, half-broken version of the exact same idea, capture all the early adopters, and just lock up the market before the 80% company has even finalized their PowerPoint deck.
So in the startup world, waiting is the literal equivalent of corporate suicide.
It is. They operate via agile sprints. They build a minimum viable product, an MVP, which, let's be honest, is usually barely functional.
Yeah. Just held together by duct tape and hope.
Exactly. They ship it to 1,000 users, watch exactly where it breaks, gather that real-world data, and fix it over the weekend.
Wow.
That is how they survive on 10%. They use real-world failure as their data-gathering mechanism.
While the corporation uses theoretical modeling to prevent the failure entirely.
You nailed it.
And you just can't run both of those processes in the same room, which leads perfectly into how these distinct philosophies physically structure the humans who are doing the work.
The org charts.
Yeah, you get this massive divergence in what the text frames as structure versus velocity.
The corporate architecture of predictability versus the startup hierarchy of chaos.
Right. Let's look at the corporate side first. It thrives on formal reporting lines, specialized roles.
You are put in a box.
Literally, you are the director of Southeast Asian supply chain logistics, and that is your box. Communication flows strictly through designated channels.
Top down, usually.
Yep. If an engineer has an idea, they pitch it to their manager, who pitches it to the director, who takes it to a VP committee. It is a hierarchy specifically designed to act as a series of filters. Every single layer is a safety net catching potential errors.
And to be fair, it is an incredibly effective machine for maintaining the status quo.
It is. But here's where it gets really interesting. Startups look at that machine and they see a straitjacket.
They see death.
Yeah. They operate in pure ambiguity. The hierarchy is flattened completely. An entry-level coder who got hired on Tuesday might literally be sitting on a beanbag chair next to the CEO on Thursday, aggressively arguing over the product roadmap.
Which would never happen in a Fortune 500 company.
Never. There are no specialized boxes in a startup. The head of marketing might be QA testing code at 2 in the morning because that's just what needs to get done to ship the product.
And we really have to place this structural difference into the context of our current moment, June 2026.
Because things are moving so fast right now.
Insanely fast. Look at the peripheral news right now surrounding this deep dive. We have headlines about agentic AI independently solving complex software engineering tasks.
Right.
We have OpenAI confidentially filing for an IPO. The technological landscape is shifting week by week, sometimes day by day.
It's hard to even keep up.
So in a world moving at that blinding velocity, formal reporting lines become a fatal liability.
I mean, think about it. If you need 6 months to approve a new AI integration through a VP committee, the AI model you are discussing is already 3 generations obsolete by the time you actually get the signature.
Exactly. The structure itself becomes the obstacle.
So it fundamentally alters the definition of failure.
That's a key point from the manifesto.
In an 80% certainty culture, the system is designed to be absolutely flawless. Therefore, a failure is a bug. It means someone, somewhere along the line, failed to follow the procedure or analyze the data correctly.
Careers end over this. Heads roll.
But in a 10% certainty culture, failure isn't a bug. It is the literal engine of progress. It is the necessary friction of iteration.
Because you are actively guessing. You only have 10% of the data. You are mathematically supposed to be wrong most of the time.
That is such a good point. You are supposed to be wrong.
Right. Every time you fail, you gain another 5% of certainty. You eliminate a variable.
It's the scientific method.
Yes, it is the scientific method applied to product development at hyperspeed. A startup practically celebrates failure, provided it happens quickly, and actually yields actionable insights.
Move fast and break things. I know it's an old cliche from the early Facebook days, but it is the absolute truth of that world.
It's their mantra.
And what's wild is that this obsession with speed over safety doesn't just stay in the code or the org chart.
Oh no, it's everywhere.
It bleeds directly into the physical world. You can literally see a company's risk tolerance the second you look at the employees. It's the clash between the corporate suit and the startup hoodie.
The visual signaling of the operating system.
Yeah. Yes. A traditional corporation is suits, business casual, crisp collars, polished shoes. But walk into a tech startup or even look back at the historical early days of Google and Meta, and it's just a sea of hoodies, faded jeans, vintage t-shirts, and sneakers.
It's a completely different aesthetic.
Now, I want to ask you about this because a lot of traditional business analysts have historically dismissed this.
Oh, constantly.
They look at a 25-year-old CTO in a hoodie and think, well, this is just millennial and Gen Z laziness. It's a rejection of adulthood. They just want to play ping pong and act like they're still in a college dorm. Is that true?
The text firmly debunks that. It's a fundamental misread of the psychology at play.
Really?
Yes, it is not laziness at all. It is highly deliberate. The casual uniform prioritizes ideas over appearances.
Okay, that makes sense.
It removes the archaic artificial barriers of the corporate world, where authority is so often visually signaled by, who has the most expensive watch, the sharpest tailoring.
What's fascinating here is the psychological safety the hoodie provides.
Explain that.
Think about what a suit communicates. A suit says, I am vetted, I am safe, I respect tradition, and I follow the rules. It is the visual embodiment of 80% predictability.
That's a great read.
But a hoodie is utility gear. It signals a complete bias toward action. It tells the room, I am not here to manage optics, I am here to ship product.
And it creates an environment of intense meritocratic focus.
Meritocratic, right.
If the goal is rapid iteration and navigating chaos, you don't want your employees wasting cognitive load on whether their tie matches their pocket square. The hoodie removes decision fatigue.
Like Steve Jobs wearing the same black turtleneck every day.
Exactly. It also visually reinforces that flattened hierarchy we talked about. When the CEO and the summer intern are both wearing the exact same obscure sci-fi t-shirt, it psychologically lowers the barrier for that intern to speak up.
They aren't intimidated by a suit.
Right. They feel comfortable pointing out a critical flaw in the CEO's logic.
So, to you listening right now, do a quick audit of your own closet. Think about what you wore into the office today or what you wore on your last Zoom call.
What is your uniform?
Are you broadcasting predictability, safety, and conformity? Or are you signaling velocity, agility, and a focus on raw output? Because this clash of cultures, this friction between the suit and the hoodie, isn't just sociological theory.
No, it has massive financial consequences.
It has literally brought multi-billion-dollar empires to their knees.
Yep.
Which brings us to the defining cautionary tale of the modern business era in the manifesto.
The Apple story.
The 1983 collision between Steve Jobs and John Sculley. Looking back at this from 2026 is just wild.
It's a perfect case study.
So set the scene. It's 1983. Steve Jobs is the ultimate founder. He runs on pure, unadulterated 10% intuition.
He is the embodiment of the startup spirit.
He operates on vision, not data, mostly because the products he wants to build don't even exist yet. You can't focus group the future. But the Apple board gets nervous. They want, quote unquote, adult supervision. So Jobs recruits John Sculley. And Sculley is a master of the corporate operating system. He is the guy in the suit, straight from Pepsi, where he mastered logistics, marketing, and marginal profitability.
He was brought in to impose 80% operational discipline onto a company that was practically vibrating with 10% chaotic energy.
Now, wait, hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here using the source's own numbers.
Okay, let's hear it.
This is where the historical narrative always gets a little warped. Because if you actually look at the raw data, Sculley crushed it.
Financially, yes.
Under John Sculley's tenure, Apple's sales exploded. They went from under $1 billion to nearly $8 billion by the early 1990s.
It was massive growth.
In any normal Fortune 500 boardroom, a CEO who 8x's revenue gets a bronze statue in the lobby. So from a corporate perspective, didn't he succeed? Why does history view him as the villain who almost destroyed the company?
Because of how he achieved that revenue, and more importantly, what he destroyed in the process.
Okay, walk me through that.
By the metrics of the corporate operating system, yes, Sculley was a massive success. He optimized the machinery perfectly. But he did it by milking the existing cow rather than breeding a new one.
Oh, wow.
Sculley raised prices. He coasted on the Macintosh's existing monopoly in the desktop publishing market. He prioritized profitability and very predictable quarterly earnings.
He managed the 80%.
Exactly. He brought Pepsi's playbook to Silicon Valley. But technology is not sugar water.
Right. People will buy the exact same Pepsi for 50 years.
Exactly. Pepsi doesn't need to invent a radically new type of liquid every 3 years to survive. But tech requires relentless, dangerous product innovation. Sculley and Jobs clashed because Jobs didn't care about optimizing quarterly profits. He wanted to make insanely great products that would define the next decade.
He wanted to change the world.
He wanted to place massive existential bets on entirely unproven technologies.
And the corporate immune system rejected him. Jobs was officially ousted in 1985.
And this is the tragedy the manifesto outlines. Once Jobs left, that raw founder's 10% energy left with him.
The spark was gone.
Sure, the revenue momentum carried them for a few years, but by the mid-1990s, Apple was functionally a zombie company.
I remember reading about that era. It was a mess.
They had completely lost their creative edge. They were churning out dozens of confusing product variations, digital cameras, CD players, video game consoles, just trying to chase market share with data-driven corporate strategy.
And failing miserably.
Failing miserably against cheaper, faster competitors. They stopped inventing the future and basically just started mismanaging the present.
Until the 1997 Renaissance.
The Great Return.
Apple is literally weeks away from bankruptcy, and they bring Jobs back. And what does he do? He immediately kills off 70% of their product lines. Total chaos. Pure founder energy.
Burn the spreadsheets.
He really did. And from that chaos comes the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone. The hoodie comes roaring back into power, and Apple eventually becomes the most valuable company on the planet.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it illustrates a fundamental structural reality of the modern economy.
Which is?
Professional corporate CEOs bring incredible scaling expertise, but their mandate to protect revenue inherently dampens the bold, irrational bets that define true breakthroughs.
Right. They can't justify the risk to the shareholders.
Exactly. Founder-led firms fundamentally operate differently. The data shows they generate more impactful patents. They invest heavily in R&D that might not pay off for a decade.
They play the long game.
They can endure the wilderness of 10% uncertainty, because the founder possesses the moral authority to tell impatient shareholders to basically go away.
It is the difference between managing a spreadsheet and manifesting a vision. And when you look at the landscape of tech titans mentioned in the text, this founder-CEO advantage is just everywhere.
It's a clear pattern.
You have Jeff Bezos dragging Amazon through years of zero profitability just to build AWS.
Wall Street hated him for years.
They really did. You have Bill Gates in Microsoft's hyper-competitive formative years, Jensen Huang at NVIDIA literally betting the entire company's existence on AI hardware years before anyone even knew what AI was going to become.
And the HP way of Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard.
Exactly. And on the flip side, you look at what happens when professional leadership completely suffocates that energy.
Look at Yahoo.
A perfect example. Yahoo essentially owned the internet in the late 90s.
They were the front door to the web. But after the founders stepped back, Yahoo installed this revolving door of professional corporate CEOs.
The suit and tie guys.
Right.
Yeah.
They had massive resources, they had the corporate structure, but they lost their velocity. When search shifted, when social media emerged, they just couldn't pivot.
They were too slow?
Their 80% certainty requirements meant they were still having committee meetings about maybe buying startups, while agile 10% companies like Google and Facebook were simply building better products and stealing their users overnight.
They were disrupted from the bottom up.
It's the classic innovator's dilemma playing out in real time.
But, and this is crucial, the text highlights one massive, glaring anomaly, an exception that proves just how difficult this cultural tightrope walk really is.
Satya Nadella.
Satya Nadella at Microsoft. Nadella is not a founder.
No, he's a lifer.
He is a professional executive. He came up through the corporate ranks, yet when he took over, he somehow managed to infuse raw, startup-like energy back into an entrenched, sluggish corporate giant.
It is a remarkable, incredibly rare feat of corporate alchemy. To understand how Nadella actually did it, you have to look at the exact mechanisms he dismantled.
The Ballmer era.
Right. Before Nadella, under Steve Ballmer, Microsoft was the ultimate toxic corporate culture. They literally used an HR system called stack ranking.
Oh, I've heard of this. It's awful.
It's brutal. Managers were forced to grade their employees on a rigid curve. This meant that even on a team of 5 brilliant, high-performing engineers, someone mathematically had to be graded as a failure.
Which instantly destroys collaboration. If my annual bonus depends on my teammate failing, I'm not going to help him fix his code. I'm going to sabotage him.
Exactly. It created deep silos, intense paranoia, and this awful know-it-all arrogance. They were terrified of risk because failure meant you were at the bottom of the stack.
So how did Nadella fix it?
He walked in and fundamentally rewired the incentive structures. He killed stack ranking immediately. He tied executive compensation directly to cross-team collaboration.
Wow, so you only win if everyone wins.
Exactly. And he forced the company to embrace open source software and Linux things Microsoft previously viewed as the literal enemy. He shifted the entire cultural philosophy from know-it-all to learn-it-all.
It's like he somehow figured out how to teach a massive lumber and cargo ship how to pop a wheelie like a jet ski.
That's a great visual.
It defies the laws of corporate physics, but it proves that a corporation can relearn the startup language if the leadership forces the issue at a structural level.
Which is the perfect pivot to the individual level.
Right, because we aren't all CEOs.
Because if it takes a visionary CEO to force a massive company to change its culture, how does an individual professional manage that transition?
Right. If you, the listener, are sitting there in your Brooks Brothers suit, deeply comfortable analyzing 80% certainty spreadsheets, and you suddenly land a job at a hyper-growth AI startup, how do you survive?
It's a huge shock to the system.
How do you actually learn this language? The manifesto lays out a playbook, but I'll warn you, it is brutal.
The transition almost always starts with theory, the reading list.
The typical advice. Someone tells you to read The Lean Startup by Hierarchies, binge the Y Combinator startup school videos on YouTube, read the Andreessen Horowitz blogs to understand the venture capital mindset.
Standard onboarding material.
But honestly, I have to push back on this. If I want to become a world-class chef, reading a cookbook doesn't mean I can survive a Friday night dinner rush in a Michelin star kitchen, right?
Not a chance.
So I read some blogs. Maybe I buy a Patagonia fleece vest. Am I suddenly fluent in startup?
Absolutely not. The text is very strict on this point. And relying on the reading list is exactly how corporate executives fail within their first 90 days at a startup.
They think they know it because they read about it.
Right. The fundamental truth is that reading isn't enough. You must live the discomfort. And living it, according to the source, means subjecting your ego to extreme distress.
An embarrassment test.
Exactly. Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, famously said that if you are not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you launched too late.
Let's really think about what that means for a corporate professional for a second.
It's terrifying.
You have spent your entire career, maybe 20 years, ensuring things are perfect, your slide decks are flawless, your financial models have zero errors, your professional identity is wrapped up in being correct.
That's your value.
And now, the startup demands that you publicly release a product that is buggy, ugly, and incomplete, just to see how the market reacts. It feels like professional negligence.
It requires a total rewiring of your nervous system. You have to develop a profound comfort with ambiguity. You have to take absolute ownership.
What does that mean in practice, absolute ownership?
It means if the server crashes at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, you don't submit a ticket to the IT department and go back to sleep.
Because there is no IT department.
Exactly. You wake up, you figure out how to reset the server yourself, or you watch the company burn. You trade polish for passion, and you trade safety for velocity.
This raises an important question, though. Is it actually possible to just flip a switch in your brain?
Not overnight.
How do you gain this fluency without completely torching your career in the process?
The most practical pathway the tech suggests is incremental immersion.
Okay.
You don't have to quit your corporate job today and join a 3-person team in a garage. You can start by advising startups.
Oh, that's smart.
You lend them your corporate stability, your understanding of how to build an actual HR framework, how to negotiate a complex enterprise contract, how to scale a supply chain. You give them your 80% wisdom.
Which they desperately need.
But in return, you act as a sponge. You absorb their 10% energy. You watch how rapidly they make decisions. You feel the urgency.
It's a symbiotic exchange.
Exactly.
And it perfectly sets up the grand synthesis of this entire discussion. Because the ultimate revelation here isn't that startups are inherently superior and corporations are just evil, sluggish dinosaurs.
No, not at all.
The goal isn't to just pick a side and stay there.
They are simply different tools required for different stages of the economic life cycle.
Right.
Startups are the spark. They fuel disruption and rapid value creation. But a spark cannot power a massive city. Corporations offer the scale, the regulatory compliance, the global distribution networks required to turn a disruptive idea into a daily utility for billions of people.
So what does this all mean for the future? How do these two worlds actually combine? We see glimpses of it in concepts like entrepreneurship.
Like Google's famous 20% time.
Yeah, where massive firms allowed engineers to spend 20% of their time acting like startup founders within the safety of the corporate walls. That's how Gmail was born.
It's the attempt to build a 10% sandbox inside an 80% fortress.
But if we pull the camera all the way back and look at the broader context of our 2026 source material, the vision is much, much larger than just a clever HR policy.
It's cosmic in scale.
The surrounding landscape of this manifesto points to an obsession with massive, world-altering scale. We are seeing terms and upcoming frameworks like 1,000 Solaras in 10 years. The journey from unicorn to Solara and Lumina AI, the trillion-dollar sun.
And this is the profound grand synthesis of the text. For the last decade, the ultimate goal of the tech world was to build a unicorn.
A startup valued at $1 billion.
Right. But a unicorn is just a highly successful disruption. The new paradigm, what they are calling a Solara, is a trillion-dollar entity that doesn't just disrupt a single market, but fundamentally transforms human civilization.
It creates the age of abundance we mentioned at the start.
Exactly. And here is the brutal truth of that. You absolutely cannot build a Solara with only 10% startup energy.
You just can't.
A garage full of brilliant hackers in hoodies can invent a revolutionary AI algorithm. But they cannot manufacture 20 million specialized microchips, secure global data centers, negotiate international energy contracts, and navigate the regulatory frameworks of 50 different countries.
To survive the journey from a garage to a trillion-dollar Solara, an organization must achieve the impossible. It must perfectly balance the relentless 10% risk-taking soul of a visionary founder with the ruthless 80% operational discipline of a professional corporate machine.
You need the spark, and you need the engine.
It is the ultimate synthesis of the two operating systems into an entirely new language of human creation.
It really is.
And that wraps up this massive cultural deep dive. We have charted the leap from the corporate suit to the startup hoodie.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We dissected the tragic but incredibly educational collision between John Scully and Steve Jobs. And we've laid out the absolute necessity for anyone listening right now of mastering the languages of risk, velocity, and relentless iteration.
Because your future value in the market depends entirely on your ability to translate between these two worlds.
Exactly. So, to you, the listener, whether you are managing a global supply chain or writing code in your basement, remember that the products you build and the legacy you leave require you to be bilingual.
You have to speak both.
You need the soul to build from scratch and the mechanics to scale to the stars. You must intimately know when to demand 80% certainty and when you just have to close your eyes and leap at 10%.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought drawn from the reality of 2026.
Lay it on us.
The text repeatedly points toward agentic AI, artificial intelligence, capable of acting autonomously. Let's extrapolate that. If AI soon becomes perfectly capable of running all the corporate structures, executing the massive data gathering, managing the compliance reviews, and calculating the 80% certainty algorithms flawlessly and instantly, what happens to the human corporate worker?
Oh, wow.
Will the entire concept of corporate culture simply be outsourced to server farms? And if so, does that mean the only economic value left for human beings will be pure, intuitive, chaotic, 10% risk-taking?
Because machines can't take leaps of faith.
Exactly. Will we all be forced to become founders in hoodies just to survive?
Now, that is the kind of question you can't just put in a spreadsheet. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope it completely changed how you look at the people, the processes, and the actual physical environment you work in every day. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.